the meaning and significance of the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights in cases of parental alienation. What these judgments means. First of all, one has to keep in mind that there are many judgments coming from the European Court of Human Rights concerning family issues, and only a portion of them deal directly with this phenomenon of parental alienation. If you look at these cases, they are quite consistent, or the judgments, they are quite consistent in the way that the court in many of these cases finds a violation of Article 8 for not fulfilling what we call the positive obligations of states to sort of take measures promptly to restore contacts in cases where they have been cut, maybe for many, many years even. There are twofold obligations under the convention, namely, first of all, what we call negative obligations of states, and secondly, positive obligations. And negative obligations, they mean that the states should refrain from interfering with the rights that are being protected by the convention. And this not only goes for Article 8, which protects private life and family life, but also for other rights that are provided for in the convention, like, for example, freedom of expression and freedom of religion, and so on and so forth. And then, in some cases, you know, the state needs to take positive measures, not to refrain from doing something, but rather to do something to make sure that the rights are being protected. And this is exactly a kind of obligation that comes into play in relation to parental alienation, namely that the state should take positive steps to rectify the situation, to restore contacts, and so on and so forth. So the breach is, you know, found due to lack of measures being taken by the state to restore the legal situation. The binding effects of judgment from the European Court of Human Rights, and this is provided for in Article 46 of the Convention, stating basically in paragraph 1 that the judgment is binding for the state. According to paragraph 2, the judgment should be sent to the Committee of Ministers that is responsible for enforcing it. So it is not the court itself, but rather, like, you know, the executive branch. This is a very important feature of the system in Strasbourg, namely this binding effect and this mechanism that has been set up by the convention to implement the judgments on the national level, to put pressure on the states. And normally a judgment would provide for, well, the court would say there has been a violation of Article 8. So if the applicant wins the case against the state, he would normally be awarded some compensation, monetary compensation, and the cost. Now, paying the cost is not such a big deal for the state. Usually they would do that, you know. I mean, I think in overwhelming majority of cases, the state simply just pays the compensation. It may be an issue, but we will not dwell on that. In these cases, the sum is relatively not so high, I would say. So usually this does not pose problems. What is the value of that in itself? Namely, you know, who is asking for money here, you know? We're talking about, you know, contact rights being severed for many, many years. And how is the money going to compensate for that, you know? It's symbolic all the same that, you know, it's an acknowledgement that my rights have been breached and I am awarded a compensation as a result of that, even though there is not much to do in order to restore contacts. The damage may be permanent from that point of view. There is this problem of time that has passed since the problems in the family started until we have a judgment from the European Court of Human Rights. This may be 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, who knows? I mean, we're at least always talking about several years because the cases would have been dealt with on the national level, you know, back and forth from one court to another, you know, and nothing happens. And then finally the applicant on the national level, he decides to go to Strasbourg. Time of proceedings before the Strasbourg Court have improved considerably over the last years, you can expect at least 2 years. I mean, that would be unrealistic to expect anything less than 2 years. So that would be in addition to all the years where the case has been, been thrown back and forth from one institution and one court to another on the national level, and then you wait at least 2 years in Strasbourg, even more. The children, as they were when the problem started, they are no longer children. They are grown-ups. So it goes without saying that, restoring, opening the case on the national level, because of a judgment from Strasbourg, how do you do that? These are grown-ups, these are adults, they decide for themselves. They may decide to try to restore contacts with the lost parent, so to speak, or they may not. This is not in the court's hands. One should be careful not to overstate the importance of these judgments. For the parties in the case, you could make the claim that it means nothing. Having said that, I still believe that they are quite important. They have already had a very positive impact on the national level in most of the states. The complexities of enforcing judgments and decisions on this issue is obvious to anyone who cares to give it a thought. Of course there are problems. What sort of pressure are you ready to use? Do you want the police to intervene? Are you ready for that? From the point of view of the best interest of the child, in prison, a parent that is not obeying, orders from the authorities in securing access rights or contact rights? Do you want to use fines on people who are already maybe seriously financially challenged, and so on and so forth? So obviously, it is easy for the court to say you have to do everything possible to make sure that contacts are being restored. But this is obviously easier said than done. And this is interesting also because there is a certain acknowledgement of the concept of parental alienation. So if you need experts to deal with it specifically, it is because the court sees this as a specific sort of issue and is a problem that needs to be addressed, and advising that this should be done with, experts, getting people to understand that, parental alienation is a very harmful thing and can have very long-lasting consequences for the children and for the parents as well. The court is talking about measures. They mean, we try to settle things, try to convince people that this is the best thing for the child and please try to do it peacefully and so on and so forth. Measures being taken to pressurize a parent to obey. These are always, the last resource. These are 46 member states now after Russia was expelled from from the Council of Europe after the invasion into Ukraine. There are 46 states, and they, if you look at the map, it's, in the east it's Armenia, Azerbaijan, and then Turkey, and then you have on the other side, Norway and Iceland, the most western part sort of Europe. And it goes without saying that the economic development, democratic development, rule of law sort of development in these countries is very different. It costs money. You have to hire a lot of experts. You have to educate people. You have to have the courts, functioning. In many countries, this is a big problem. Not only in these kind of cases, but in general. Court proceedings take many years. Implementing a judgment that requires many things to be taken into consideration, improve the system as a whole, the court system, the administrative proceedings, you have to find people who are qualified to do the job, so on and so forth. This is not going to happen in one day. This is a long procedure that takes many years, to improve. So even though states will positively receive a judgment, and undergo the obligations, and they want to do their best. It is not always so easy, you know. This is political in the end, you know. They need money for this, and it's for the politicians to decide. And some of them may not be, you know, they may think that other issues are more important than, you know, this. This is easier said than done in many situations. It will be a slow process, but one can only hope that, you know, things will be improved as time passes.